What's up, DBE fam? Welcome back to the show. We are back with another episode of a 3-part series that we're doing around masculine and feminine energy, left brain, right brain, the science, the myths, all of the things that we're chatting about. And we've got Mike here.
Hey.
Again.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. So session 2.
I threw on my favorite white t-shirt and my hat.
I love it.
Yep.
It's perfect. So in the first part, if you didn't listen, we get a little spicy. We talk all about marketing and people sort of calling out strategy as if it's a bad thing. We talk about the difference between feminine and masculine ways of running your business, which, spoiler alert, there is no difference. It's all the same thing. So go back and listen to that episode if you haven't yet. In this episode today, part 2, we're going to dive into the science of really what is going on in the brain and the types of energy that we have so that you can get a better understanding of where we're going in part 3. And part 3 is going to be all about how you can schedule more effectively in your workday or in your business or just in your life in general so that you can really optimize your productivity, decrease the stress levels that you might have or the overwhelm or just sheer decision-making, exhaustion. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes at the end of the day, when I don't really even do a lot, I feel exhausted.
Yeah. And I think, especially for the people that, I was one of them who thought that you had to work until exhaustion. That's the only way to get good results. It's like, no, that's where how can you create from that type of place?
Yeah.
There's a time and a place where it's just like, hey, I got tasks and I want to check them off to create this thing that I'm creating. But it's like, you can't come up with new creations if you're constantly just
work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, well, and if you're constantly in this grind mode, you can't come up with new ideas. You're just going to be, and there's times for grind mode.
Yeah, there's seasons.
Let's hear about the science.
The science behind it. So as we said in the first part, this has nothing to do with your gender, your preference, how you identify.
Yeah, it's not male, female, or whatever. We're talking about energy.
We're talking about energy.
That's energy.
I was just going to do that. So in our brain, we've got the left side of our brain and the right side of our brain, and it is broken into the left side being the more quote-unquote masculine. That is going to be the more logical side of your brain. And then the right side is technically called the creative side of your brain, which would be more feminine. Now, the good news is we both have both.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So on the left side,
yes,
I'm genuinely asking.
I'm sweating because I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer.
Oh, you know the answer. I know you know the answer. That's why I'm asking. On the left side, are those procedures actually happening on the left side of the brain? Is that why they break it up like that?
Yes.
Okay.
To my knowledge and understanding, yes.
Okay, cool.
So those types of thoughts, those types of decisions, those types of activities are happening on the left.
Or do they just say no, I'm left brain and I'm right brain?
No, that's where they're happening.
Oh, cool.
And we have a default side. So while we both have, we all have all, so we have a right and a left because you have to every equal and opposite action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. What's that quote? I actually think I have it written down here. To every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So when something goes up, it has to come down. When there's darkness, there's also light. There's day, there's night. That's the way it works. It's like laws of the universe.
There's black, there's white. T-shirts.
Yes.
T-shirts for the
non-YouTube
crew.
Black and white T-shirts. So with that, in your brain, we all have a left and right, and the left is going to be things like logic, reason, information, calculations, processing, knowledge, structure, numbers. That's all going to be on the left. And then the right is going to be more of the creative imagination, transformation, big thinking, zoomed out 30,000-foot view, a lot of the processing and the understanding. Notice I did not say artistic. We're not talking about you're a good painter, so you're a right-brained person. That's not what we're talking about here.
That's kind of a skill, right?
Yeah, it can get more granular.
It's more creative.
Creative, yeah.
As opposed to someone being better at creating a painting.
Yes.
You're still creating.
We're all artistic. We're all creative. We are creators. That is actually what we do as humans. We create new life. We create.
For the people that, and this isn't, I like to use examples of things that I've been through, but I never thought of myself as a creative. So real quick side story, and then I know you want to get into the science of this. One of our mastermind members, not in our mastermind, the one that we're in, Keith Mills.
Yeah.
That was super cool guy.
So cool.
He helps electronic music producers basically get out of their own way and get more creative and be able to finish music. I think his product is called Finish More Music. But anyway, he ran us through this super cool exercise that really, the whole point of it was to demonstrate that everyone is creative.
Yeah.
And although I knew that like, oh yeah, obviously I have some creativity in me, the exercise was incredible because it really brought out the potential of creativity that could be there. And when that gets unleashed, it's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's really a beautiful thing, and it's there for everybody. So like, that's why, I love this type of stuff where it's like, don't let the logic and the reason and everything run your entire life.
Yeah.
I
don't want to share his exact exercise he ran us through because it's his and it was so powerful, and I feel that you just need to do it. But essentially, he had us do this one thing, right? You had to like figure something out, write it on paper, and then he dismantled sort of the unwritten rules that we've all created in our head. And when he dismantled all of those unwritten rules and he sort of broke the walls of structure down for us, that's when everybody in the room like 10x'd their quote unquote creativity. And it was really cool to see because there are some people who just are more naturally that way.
Like color outside the lines type.
Color outside the lines, and I was one of them. So for me, I went in like completely broken box. Like I didn't have all of those walls.
Oh, that's right. And you scored super high. I
scored the highest in the room. Yeah.
Don't you kind of feel like, you being the listeners, that I'm getting one-upped a little bit? Or is that something I need to work through?
That is not what I was saying.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Not what I was saying. But what was interesting too, though, is I may have scored highest in the room. This is not an IQ test, okay? The first time, but then when he broke the box down, I then struggled to get more and more and more creative, while most of the room then became so much more creative because
you all got closer to your score.
Yes, exactly. The gap got closed.
I actually forgot about how he did the experiment,
Yeah.
so thanks for the reminder there, because it was cool seeing how I struggled on the first round.
Yeah.
And on the second round, I got a lot closer to your
Yeah.
to your number, which was super cool because it's like, wow, it's there for everybody,
Yeah.
the creativity. We are off on a tangent.
No, I love it.
Go follow Keith Mills, Keithmills.
Yeah, 2 L's. Yeah.
Keith Mills.
He's awesome.
Yeah, anyway.
Shout out Keith. So in the brain, I don't even know where we were.
Great English accent, too.
We've got the left side and the right side, and you will default to one more than the other. So we all do tend to default to one, and that has nothing to do with anything other than just that's the way that you're sort of wired. I believe there's a little bit of nurture involved, though. Like if you tend to be, quote unquote, good at one of the things, one side of your brain, and you're sort of fostered and nurtured into that as a child, where they're like, oh, Mikey, you're so good at math. It's like I think you sort of lean into that versus you hand in an art project, it's not the best in the class, you're embarrassed by it, you get a bad grade, and then immediately you start telling yourself a story that you're not artistic. And so I believe that we carry that with us. That is my belief. So we do default to one side, and I think that our external environment has a lot to do sometimes with which side we sort of lean into, because so many of us just turn the faucet off on one. We create a narrative that I am not good at math, we turn it off.
Yeah. Do you think that happens? Well, I have 2 questions for you. Do you think that happens because early on, you maybe say you draw something and you see that someone near you, so whether it's like a classmate or, I don't know, a sibling, I don't know, their drawing is like significantly better. And when I say better, I mean like, it's more detailed. It's obvious what it is. It's impressive from like an artistic perspective. Do you think that's what causes people to kind of shut down?
I think so. I think it's even, I've shared the story in my own personal, so I grew up with an artist. My mom is a professional artist. I am artistic. I believe I am. My brother is very artistic. I was always in like special art classes, and yet I turned my creativity off for so long because at a very young age, 5 in elementary school, kindergarten, my parents never hung my artwork up on their fridge. And so I just created this story in my head that like it wasn't good enough for them to hang it up, because I'd go to my friends' houses and they'd all have pictures and paintings hanging on the fridge. And it wasn't until I was about 30 that I told my parents that one time, and my mom started laughing, and I was like, I don't understand. It's not funny. Like this is painful, you know?
Your mom just didn't want the house to look like a kindergarten class exploded.
And our fridge wasn't magnetic.
Oh.
That's what she said. She was like, no, we just didn't have a magnetic fridge.
I thought it was because your mom
is particular.
Well, she the house is beautiful.
Yeah, we had an advanced palate.
Yeah, she was very particular about her styling. Anyway,
yeah. No, but it was both. It was like one, our fridge wasn't magnetic.
I can't believe. Doug, find a refrigerator that's not magnetic so I can use that as an excuse.
For 25 years, I carried this internal deep-rooted belief that like I was not worthy because my art wasn't worthy because it wasn't hanging on the fridge.
Thank God for that. I might not have met you.
If I thought it was
Butterfly
worthy.
effect. Who knows?
I know.
I had another question for you about
Yeah,
this.
go ahead.
So you already mentioned your mom is
Yes.
a professional artist. And obviously you grew up around that, okay? But you also have a work ethic that rivals people that's kind of their MO. They might not think of themselves as like creatives and things like that. Their whole thing is just like grind it out, get it done, work ethic, right? And I think about and the reason for the question is that's how I was kind of raised, right? It was very show up early, get the job done, put in the extra hours, and it worked for me in corporate America, like at my 9 to 5. Like I just had to outwork everybody, right? I'm not saying I outworked everyone, but like I outworked enough people that, you know, I was doing okay. I was doing well there. Anyway, so now I didn't have an artist to learn from, so I don't consider myself a great drawer. My handwriting is messy. Sometimes I struggle with creativity especially when it feels forced.
Yeah.
So like, where do you fall in there?
I don't know. I think I'm in both. I think everybody plays in both arenas. And I think anyone struggles with creativity when it's forced. Like we always use the example, the worst and hardest time that you have, whether it's writing a caption or writing a blog or an email, like there's nothing worse than sitting behind the computer and the cursor just blinking at you. And you're like, I just can't think of anything to say. Obviously, shut the computer, go outside and go for a walk.
Does the cursor still blink, babe?
I don't know.
I don't know. But listen, if you've seen The Matrix, you know what we're talking about. We're 80s babies. Leave us alone.
But for anyone, that's going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
However, why is it that so many people, even those people who don't consider themselves creative, all of a sudden get these quote unquote downloads in the shower? You get a really good idea when we go for a hike or a walk or we're outside, whatever it is, right? This random idea comes in at the most random time, but it's not random. You're just allowing it to come through without the pressure of having to create.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So with the right and left side of the brain, we do have different things that are going on scientifically in the brain. One is going to be more responsible for, like I said, those like logical tasks and spreadsheets and stuff, which I can't help but make a face when I do that because I don't love that stuff.
Is it always so? Here is it always like spreadsheets and tasks, right? Or is it? It also can be applied when we're talking about logical, right? It's when like decision making, people often like we talk about this where like we would get stuck in the logic when we were traveling in the RV and we were like, oh, do we go here? Do we go there? And it was like when we actually surrendered, feminine, when we surrendered and threw out most of the logic, we're not going to drive off a cliff, but you throw out most of the logic and you're just like, no, you surrender to what's going to be what's going to be, right? So like, are there other things besides spreadsheets?
Well, yeah, and I think with anything, when you're talking specific about decision making, it's like head versus heart. It's logic versus desire. You know, and that's the torture that we sit in,
so
is
like
the back and forth, analyzing all the what ifs. And so I have a list here of masculine and feminine things to your question.
Was it even a question? I don't even know.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to read some of them off, but for the context of this conversation, we call masculine him and feminine her, just for the context of what I'm about to say. So the masculine energy, he is going to be very direct. It's very linear. It's A to B. It's what are the steps. So no, it's not always spreadsheets, but it's sitting down and going, well, if we drive west, then this is going to happen, and we're going to miss this, and this is da-da-da-da, and we have 9 miles to get there.
Those things are reality.
They are reality.
Yeah.
They are reality. He loves structure and rules and sort of playing inside of the lines, and it's very clear. It's more objective. So I think of even like a sport, for example. Oh my God, I'm so bad at this, but like football, basketball, right? Like
you went there.
There are points that you're going to get if you get the ball in the hoop.
It's a finite.
It's objective.
It's a finite game.
Right. And then you go to something subjective, my sport, gymnastics, right? Or figure skating or dance or diving, and it's very subjective.
Finite rules, but subjective application to the rules.
Finite rules and subjective application. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like internal decision and dialogue that a judge has where they're literally just giving their opinion. Mm-hmm. You do have to hit certain skills, and those skills are going to be rated on different levels. But whether or not I thought your legs were bent is up to me, and you're a different judge, and maybe you didn't think the legs were bent.
Totally.
So it becomes this subjective where that would be more feminine. It's a little bit more of the creative, a little bit more of the flow, less of that structure. So the masculine, when we think of this also, I want you to understand, I skipped this at the beginning. We talked how there has to be both, right? Masculine and feminine. When you think of a river has to have two things. Number one, it has to have water. If it doesn't...
Unless you're in Arizona and they have signs for rivers and
but they're dried up.
There's no river.
So it's not a river. So then what is it when there's no water? It's like a dried up, desolate canal or something. Example. So in order to have an actual flowing river, you need to have water and you need to have river bed edges.
Riverbanks.
Riverbanks.
Not bed.
Banks.
You do need a bed though. The bed is the bottom. So yes, technically, otherwise the water would fall through.
And if you didn't have those edges, it would now be a lake or a pond.
Yeah, it would just kind of disperse.
Spread.
Yeah.
The walls, the river edges, the bank, that's masculine. It's holding the energy inside. The water is free flowing, and that's the feminine. Where there's a misconception is that feminine is less than or not as strong. And the funny thing is, in nature, it's actually the opposite. The feminine is the strength. The feminine is the power. The water, it cuts through the earth, and it decides the route that it's going to take as it's coming down the mountain, right? The water is literally carving a path, and the edges, the masculine banks, is holding the water inside. If you don't have both of those elements, it's not a river. It could be a lot of other things, but it's not a river. Maybe it's an estuary. What is an estuary?
No, let's not go there.
I don't remember the definition.
No. I don't either.
We're not going there.
No.
Okay, we're done. We're not going there.
Tributary.
Okay, so the feminine energy, just to talk about.
Archipelago.
What?
I'm just dropping like.
I don't know what that is.
Peninsula, archipelago, estuary. What'd you say?
Estuary.
I think that's a river that feeds another river.
Maybe.
But I could be wrong.
I don't know.
Comment below on how dumb we are.
Don't do that. I mean, you can if you want to. Yeah.
Okay.
The feminine energy, though, is going to be the free-flowing. It's the seeing possibilities. It's the 30,000-foot view. It's more of the visionary role. Like when we're going to go granular in the business, the feminine energy is more of the visionary, expansive, wow, let's go there. What can be bigger?
Ideas.
How can we play? Ideation. And the masculine is going to be more of the integrator operations of like, let me actually get you there. How are we going to get there?
Yeah.
The feminine energy also knows when it's time to slow down, when it's time to speed up, when it's time to push harder.
But isn't I have to interrupt there because I have a question about that.
Yeah.
For clarity. Is the feminine energy knowing, or is it more so like
listening?
When you're sitting back and receiving and kind of letting things happen? Isn't that just the feminine energy in itself?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding.
That is living in the feminine energy, right? It's receivership. It's not, applying that logical thinking to all the decisions and kind of just being like, for instance, in our launches, we have certain things that we know we're going to do.
Yeah.
And then there's some fun, well, everything's fun, but like there's some things that we might just test.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, let's test this. This is like creative. And kind of like, let's just see what happens.
Sure.
But there are certain things like, I always like to use an extreme example. You have to, the way we do it, you are going to show up on camera.
Right.
Right? In some capacity, whether it's recorded, pre-recorded, not recorded, blah, 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 whatever, live. But like, that's something that's just going to happen. But maybe we go to a studio. Maybe you wear a nice hat that day, right? Hat. I'm doing a weird gesture with my hands. So that's kind of how I look at the feminine, application for something that like is typically viewed as masculine, like a launch.
Right.
A launch doesn't have to be this like grinded out thing. It's just
no.
like,
Well, nothing in business does.
No, and business is an infinite game, but that's a whole other thing.
Well, business in itself, I feel like, would be categorized under feminine because we are literally creating and building, and that is what the feminine energy is. It's
100%.
creating life.
Entrepreneurs typically live in the feminine. And
Visionaries.
Which are most entrepreneurs are visionaries.
Correct. But then we need an integrator. We need the
which
COO.
Is why I know we just went off on a thing, but this is
important.
Yeah, I mean, this is if you are a visionary, this is, and this is good to look at yourself, right? Like where you might be frustrated and being like, I hate all that business stuff. It's like, good.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But work to get to the point where you can hire someone to do that stuff for you.
Well, and I have something, this is perfect. I have something for the listeners. You can actually download, it's totally for free. It's just a little PDF that you can download here. And what it is basically, I've broken up, I love charts, I love visuals. So there's 4 boxes, and we have on the left side, the masculine, like the brain, and on the right side, we have the feminine. And then there's what the left and the right brains do. And then the boxes underneath are examples of what that might be in your business. And so at like a quick glance, you can actually see, there's also a blank one for you to fill in yourself to see like, where are you in your business? Where are you spending most of your time? And then you can look visually and go, well, that's really interesting. I really don't like most of the tasks on this side, and I love the tasks on this side. And that's going to help you discern sort of, are you more of the visionary or are you more of the integrator? Which, like you said, most entrepreneurs and founders are going to be more of the visionary, which is so important then for us to get an integrator or someone of operations. And when I look at the chart, I look at the stuff on the left side, the masculine side. It's not that I'll never do it. It's not that you should only do things you like. But that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so many of our students, they come in as these visionaries, and they're so excited about the ideas, and they sometimes will get lost in the execution because some of it they think it feels hard because there's a lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons is they put unrealistic expectations on like fast results and things like that. They're looking at your chapter 18 and they're on chapter 1, and there's those reasons, but
it also might not be their default. They might be a default right brain, so it is going to be harder.
100%.
Yeah,
that's a great point. That's a great I should have led with that because and that's where it's like that's where you need to surrender and just be like, hey, maybe I need to hire a VA.
Yeah,
because it's going to make my life so much better, and my business will get off the ground.
Yeah. But I'm a huge advocate for also
roll up the sleeves
and learn it so that when you do hire someone, you know exactly what they are doing. How long does that task actually take?
And why else do you want to know how to do it?
Because if they disappear or something happens, you need to be able to pick the pieces
up.
Well,
now I have something more feminine for you here. Because then if you know how to do it, you can apply creative, feminine energy to the application of that. In the previous episode, I used the guitar example. So if you actually know all the fundamentals of the guitar, so if you know all about how to build a landing page, that's when you can get creative.
Yeah,
you can't get creative. You can't get super like in the weeds creative unless you have some sort of like framework understanding of what the heck you're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Picasso said something like, learn the rules to break them.
Yeah, how can you get creative with a launch if you don't know how to launch? You got to at least know the framework first.
But I love the example of the guitar because it's just such a like relatable thing for people who maybe don't even know what goes into a launch. Like baking a cake, it's like just learn that when you mix these things together, the yeast is going to rise or the dough is going to be dry or whatever, and then you can start to make your own recipes. A
lot of cakes happening here.
Cakes,
bread,
painting,
yeast,
bread, anything. You know what I mean? But it's like learn the ingredients.
It's a great example.
Chefs, exactly. And like they just play in the kitchen. It's like, oh, when these two things go together, this is what happens.
Because you can't play in the kitchen if you don't know what. I know this is extreme again, but like if you don't know what salt tastes like, or like a specific item of food besides salt, because that's pretty stupid. But how are you going to know like, oh, I need to add cream cheese to this pasta dish that I'm making? Oh, and I'm like watching you do that, and I'm like, why would you do that? And you're like, well, I know that it's adding this type of flavor, and that will add this type of flavor. So it's like, oh, interesting. But if you didn't know what cream cheese tasted like, you wouldn't even have thought to use it.
Yeah.
We're all over the place right now, and I want a bagel.
It's I want a bagel. No, it's great. I love it. So circling back, just to get us back on track, we do have the download. Get it, look at it, take a look, just kind of like see visually what we have on the right, left. Assess yourself. See if you think maybe you are a little bit more left-brained, a little bit more right-brained. Don't judge yourself.
What's the benefit for them?
So that you can understand what your natural strengths are going to be and maybe why you have resistance around certain things.
Love it. Give yourself grace.
Yes. Grace.
Said that with a lot of passion.
You did.
Give yourself grace. I had to give myself grace after I left my corporate job because I realized very quickly that we needed to hire an integrator.
This is a great example, though. When you left your job at the bank, you initially came into the business thinking that you were going to do more of like the integrator operations role, which would be more of the left brain stuff. And what we quickly realized is that you actually prefer more of the visionary type stuff, but it doesn't mean, this is the key here, it doesn't mean that you're not good at it or that you weren't already doing it, because in your corporate job, you were doing a lot of that left brain management.
It was my least favorite part.
Right, but it was your job.
Yeah. And so I had to.
So you had to, but also there's like that level of, or element of like, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Going back to the creativity thing too, on that topic right there, and obviously we're always learning and we're always growing, right? But once I started learning, because I worked in banking before, once I started learning this marketing world, that's when it really got fun.
Yeah.
When I really started to learn things, because then I could get creative with, so for instance, not just helping people in our business, but helping people in the mastermind that we're both in. That was the best feeling in the world, because once I like faced that discomfort of learning and growing and understanding a lot of the ins and outs of the digital marketing world, course creation and all that stuff, that's when I was able to really apply a lot of the creativity. So I had to roll my sleeves up too and learn. And
yeah.
You know, that's the best way to get into the creativity.
Yeah, I love it.
The creative flow.
Yeah. So to sort of put a bow on all of this, University of California had said, they did a research a while back, and they said when we jump from task to task, or when we jump from left to right side of the brain, and I'm talking to all us multitaskers who think we're good at it, we're actually not. Nobody's good at multitasking.
It's like, what'd you say on that call?
When we jump from side to side, it actually takes you 23 minutes and 15 seconds to be exact, according to their research. 23 minutes and 15 seconds for your brain to actually be able to focus again. So you're not fully 100% focused on something that you're doing when you think that you are. Example being, you know, you're writing an email to someone and a text message comes through and then you go back to the email. It's actually taking your brain about 23 minutes to get back to where it once was, despite the fact that the text is done in 10 seconds. Your brain is now jumping back and forth. And when we jump from task to task, specifically what we'll talk about in episode 3, when we're jumping from feminine to masculine and we're going back and forth between the brain, this is what leaves us exhausted, which is why at the end of the day, sometimes we're like, I don't even know what I did today, but I'm fried.
Yeah.
I'm fried. So in the third part of this series, we're going to talk all about what I do with my schedule. And this has taken a really long time for us to actually do it, because it's just had a lot of moving pieces on the chessboard for me to get to this place.
We were building and learning.
Yeah, we were building and learning. But I'm going to talk about some of the things that I do in my day that maybe you can borrow in your day or your day, and maybe start implementing them just in a small way to really help mitigate, or I should say like decrease would be a better word, the amount of that jumping back and forth, and also giving me the permission to kind of be in flow on those days. Because there is nothing worse than being in flow and having to stop for a call or something. Like having to stop because your alarm goes off or your calendar says so.
Totally.
Flow interruptus.
Flowus interruptus.
I love it. All right, if you loved this episode, make sure if you didn't listen to part 1, you do, and then you definitely come back for 3. But if you love this episode, take a screenshot, share it on social media, tag me at I am Jessica DeRose. You could tag Mike as well.
Mike DeRose, at Mike.DeRose.
At Mike.DeRose. Let us know what some of your takeaways were from this. I hope you get into the flow. I hope you download the free download that we have for you. It's in the show notes, totally free. Grab it. A little worksheet for you to start working through just the visuals of left side, right side, the different energies, and you can kind of get task management down to see where you're at. Cool. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.